Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RPO Leadership Forum, a free monthly webinar series hosted by the Recruitment Process Outsourcing Association and presented by RPOA members. I'm thrilled to be joined by RPOA Advisory Board member, Jason Kramwidi. He will introduce a new topic we haven't covered here at the RPOA before, a topic that is just starting to emerge in the contingent recruiting space. I'm looking forward to learning many new things from Jason today. My name is Lamis Aburama, and I'm the Executive Director of the RPOA. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available tomorrow on the RPOA website. You will also receive a link to the recording. We encourage you to ask questions anytime during the presentation. Before I turn it over to our speaker, please allow me to introduce Jason Kramwidi. Jason is Executive Vice President of Broadleaf Results. He brings 20 years of leadership, business development, consulting, and management experience in talent acquisition and human capital services. As a trusted advisor, his goal is to help clients realize efficiencies in recruiting and staffing by identifying ways to scale and standardize through innovative, value-based solutions. Through collaboration and careful analysis of a client's hiring processes, employees, cost structure, and systems, he partners to challenge their current delivery structure and how best to leverage recruiting, outsourcing, and assessment to drive better outcomes. Welcome, Jason.
Great, thank you, Lamis, and hello, everybody. Good morning and good afternoon, and delighted to be here with Lamis and the RPOA, the Recruitment Process Outsourcing Association. As Lamis said, I've been an advisory board member since 2018 and actively involved in the RPOA. I will say, if you are considering membership to the RPOA, I highly encourage it. It's a great group to collaborate, learn, test new ideas with colleagues and friends. So as far as an industry organization, it's been extremely valuable, not only for me, but Broadleaf, the company I currently work for. So today we're going to talk about direct sourcing. And I know within RPO lingo, direct sourcing is used quite frequently about sourcing passive candidates. Well, recently, I'd say over the past few years, it's been increasingly used in reference to contingent labor. So part of this and the purpose of this is really educational around defining direct sourcing in the different categories. So certainly educational about what direct sourcing is and what it means, not only to RPO, but also with respects to total talent. Just with Broadleaf, if you don't know our organization, we are a total workforce solutions company based in Buffalo, New York. We're a women-owned business. Our workforce services include recruitment outsourcing, of course, MSP or managed service programs, where we manage customers' contingent labor, as well as all of the suppliers. As well as payrolling services. So a whole spectrum of services around total talent. Our industries that we're strong in, and we focus on advanced manufacturing, energy, aerospace, semiconductor, and technology sectors. I will say our key differentiators really around solution design. The recruiting process is complex these days, and our ability to stitch together solutions and process and technology is certainly a strength. And then secondly, a key differentiator is the trusted partnerships that we form with our customers day in and day out. So just a little bit more information on Broadleaf and what we're going to do. So the purpose of today is really to discuss direct sourcing as it relates to contingent labor, demystify some of the questions that generally pop up, So we're going to talk about definitions to level set us. What are the opportunities? And then what are the challenges that we're seeing with the adoption of direct sourcing programs? I do feel for those that are in the RPO business, direct sourcing can certainly be a service line expansion and extension for what you're currently doing today. I encourage you, as Lamise said earlier, to use the chat to ask questions. She'll post questions if they do pop up in chat, or certainly after, around collaboration with direct sourcing and what you're experiencing. This session is a bit contrarian, honestly. I think there's been a lot of discussion around direct labor. I certainly have been involved with our clients over the past few years to introduce it into our MSP programs and what it's all about. But this also comes from frustration as well. I think there's opportunities to advance direct sourcing in programs, and there's certainly challenges that we're facing from a client adoption standpoint. So the purpose of this, again, is to dive deeper into some of those. So generally, what does the future hold for direct sourcing? As I thought about it, I think, man, I'm so confused. What we're seeing, not only with RPOs, our competitors, folks that are in talent acquisition, companies that operate contingent labor, there's a high level of confusion of what is direct sourcing and what does it mean? Because it means different things to different stakeholders, to different competitors, to different service providers that are out there, and how they defined it. And as a result, we've seen a lot of confusion from our clients and also macro across our entire industry, recruiting and staffing businesses as a whole. So what I'm going to do today is talk about some of those definitions and some of the trends, just to level set us going forward. So trends, there's a number of stats around what's happening. I think we can all agree that coming out of the pre-pandemic and then entering into recessionary headwinds that we're faced, that companies are leaning on the flexibility that contingent workers provide to their organizations. In the face of uncertainty, the ability to hire a temp to fill a gap, to fill a skill set, is becoming increasingly important. And we're seeing that not only now, but we're going to see it into the future as well. So staffing industry analysts, they looked at direct sourcing, and through one of their surveys in 2022, they estimated that 62% of enterprise organizations, big companies that use contingent workers, are in some way, shape, or form leveraging a direct sourcing program, either through an MSP as a provider, or many companies also insource their contingent labor programs and have internal staff execute it. When I looked at all the different numbers out there, I've seen this anywhere from 40% to 62%. My first reaction was hogwash. We're just not seeing it. And maybe it's just us, but I've certainly had lots of discussions with executives at organizations, and quite frankly, it's a hard slog. It's been a challenge, contingent direct sourcing and contingent labor programs. And there's a variety of different reasons why, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But I feel like that 62% number is way overstated, and maybe it's just the questions that they're answering. By my estimation, when I look at direct sourcing, and in my personal opinion, I think we're right at that innovator curve. When you look at the maturity curve, data would suggest that we're up over the hump from early majority to late majority. I don't feel that sense of adoption, direct sourcing in contingent labor programs, specifically in MSPs. I think we're at that red star, that we're just starting to move up that curve. And as I said earlier, it's been a bit of a slog. I've been directly involved in many client conversations about the merits of introducing cost savings, quality, cycle times, etc. And it's just been a very slow moving titanic to get them to, yes, that sounds interesting, to actually executing a program. So what does a typical workforce look like today? And these are, plus or minus 10%, depending on the organization and what they're doing, but approximately 50% of an organization's workforce is permanent staff, direct hires. 30% is approximately, again, plus or minus 10%, is 30%. 10% in the independent contractor, freelancer, gig workers. Of course, some organizations are much more dependent than others. And then lastly, statement of work or SOW or SOW business, which is used, it's project-based work. It's typically managed inside a VMS technology as part of a Fieldglass or a Beeline, and it's very milestone-based, often used in IT organizations to manage infrastructure rollouts, software application development, ERP system implementations, etc. So a lot of this is really an evolution of, or I should say, with direct sourcing, is total talent or total talent management, and just wanted to share with you what do those services entail. Being this is RPOA, Recruitment Process Outsourcing Organization, many of us and organizations are using RPO. So you're outsourcing all or parts of the process to an organization that's working on your behalf. So really as an extension of the talent acquisition department. The services I mentioned earlier, just from going clockwise: payrolling services, managed service programs or MSPs, direct sourcing, and then RPO. So direct sourcing is really nestled right in between MSP programs and recruitment process outsourcing programs, because RPOs often have that direct sourcing capability in-house and can execute quite frequently. Also includes technology is extremely important. So ATS, CRMs, VMSs, you've probably heard those acronyms among others, and then SOW, procurement management. That essentially makes up what total talent is all about. So let me pause there for a second. So current definition, and I know you all have defined in your own minds what that means, and I'll get to that in a second, but direct sourcing in the contingent labor it's a value-add service of an MSP or an organization's in-house team. And you are leveraging their data and the company's employment brand to attract candidates. And that, by doing so, that expands the direct sourcing contingent labor supply. So think of it as a database, a talent community that you're building on the client's behalf. So when a candidate, for example, is, let's say, applying directly to that company for a permanent job, full-time job, there could be the option. Often they're interested in what temp jobs that organization could have, not necessarily going through a staffing supplier. So here is the confusion that I mentioned earlier, and I think there's direct sourcing types. Well, no, there's direct sourcing types and how that fits into each category or service provider. So taking the top left-hand side, so talent acquisition departments, RPOs, search firms, this is the definition of direct sourcing is recruiters and sourcers outreaching to passive candidates, either through LinkedIn, Indeed, other resume databases, and that's a complement to their advertising efforts. That generally focuses on permanent hires. Other terms that are used is sourcing, headhunting, passive search, name gen, CRM, talent community and or network are in terms of direct sourcing and engaging candidates to their brand. So you all know that in terms of being an RPO. RPO's talent acquisition, we've been doing this for decades. There's nothing new about it. Staffing firms, those are recruiters that are focused on fulfillment for contingent labor for their job orders, the job orders that they have sitting on their desk. They're focused on it. Again, it's focused on the contingent worker. That's similar verbiage, sourcing, headhunting, passive search, etc. Where it's come into vogue, especially for MSPs or in-source teams, is it's really about expanding the contingent labor supply, really through technology and the employment brand to scale it. Again, it's focused on the contingent labor workforce and those that are interested in contingent labor. Other words that have been used in the past are, you may have heard, as direct fulfillment, contingent RPO has been used, and then the flip of that, which is RPO for contingent. So those are some different definitions that have been used in looking at the three different types of service provider categories. So what are the benefits of direct sourcing? I mentioned them earlier. When it first started direct sourcing for contingent labor, the number one thing was the top corner, left-hand corner. We as your MSP provider, by leveraging data and your employment brand, can drive cost savings into your program. Let's face it, some companies have $50 million, $100, $200, $300 million in contingent labor spend that they have. So the ability to take the MSP to payroll those referred workers and have a reduced markup compared to their staffing suppliers, that delta can result in significant cost savings. And so that was the play that was happening, is cost savings, cost savings, cost savings. And that resonated. Typically with the buyer and MSP, it's procurement. So they're doing anything that they can do to wring costs from that particular segment or spend category. So that was the number one. The others are, hey, if we have an engaged talent community of contingent workers, we can accelerate submittal times and processing times for greater efficiencies. The third is around quality. If we can take people that were already interested in your brand as a direct employer, and they may express interest in contract positions. What's interesting here is when you think about that data, so people that applied to a permanent job at a client through their ATS, only one candidate gets the job. So let's say there's 100 applicants that apply to the position, you direct source 100 others. Generally we've seen in our experience is about a 1% to 2% conversion rate. So you've got a significant amount of leftovers, 98, 99 candidates didn't get the job. So what do we do with that data and with those leftovers, if you will? And there certainly is an opportunity to monetize them. So that's a quality aspect, which I'll get into later. And then lastly, it's about, hey, we can use experience. We can create a better experience that's faster when we set up direct sourcing for contingent. I'm going to go into provide an example of a use case, a case study that Broadleaf executed on. That was, again, direct sourcing it's about being creative, and there's many different segments of the population within the organization that can benefit. And this one happened to be a large manufacturing company that we've worked with, provide current MSP services. It's focused around the retiree skills gap and addressing it through a very creative direct sourcing approach in lockstep with their HR department. So again, the problem was they presented some early retirement packages. Lots of people took onto those that retirement offer, and it created a skills gap, actually a serious skills gap, with retirees leaving the organization, and new employees hadn't moved up the learning curve sufficiently. So in addressing that, we came to the table and really helped bridge the gap through their alumni retiree population. We segmented the population, we used HR data, and we conducted the outreach in partnership with HR. We streamlined the selection process so we could get to a small subset, and the results were 290 skilled candidates that were sourced and interested, and then we ended up payrolling 30 plus of those immediately into the productive contingent workforce, and that helped narrow that gap. So that's a good example of a use case with a specific challenge that a company was facing and how you can address it through direct sourcing. So direct sourcing attributes as it relates to the MSP. And so when you think about what's really needed to be successful to execute on a direct sourcing program, there's really 6 things that we feel is vital to having and running a program. 1, technology is super important. You got to run it on a highly advanced, again, contingent labor is a complex process. You got to have the right technology, like an Optly, like a LiveHire. These are some established entrants into the direct sourcing platform ecosystem. Engage, you got to have a really good opt-in talent community. So getting people, if they did apply for a position full-time, getting them to opt in to say, yeah, I'd be interested in learning more about contingent jobs, temp jobs at this company or organization. Segmentation, got to segment the population so you're delivering relevant information. Curating is another critical piece. Somebody's on top of that talent community, continually communicating with them and providing them valuable information about the organization. Pushing relevant jobs with those tech platforms. Texting is a great way, is the primary way, I should say, to texting and engaging with the talent community, and it's super fast. And the last thing is oftentimes there's a focus on the tech and process, but you can't get away from recruiting. The ability to recruit is vitally important to taking that interested candidate and pulling them through the process so they're ultimately selected. So just sharing some best practices as it relates to MSP and direct sourcing. So again, there is some confusion in the marketplace about the term. I think you can see when you look at the service category providers, you can see there's different definitions and people are using it interchangeably, not necessarily in the job segment that's appropriate. And that's causing confusion. And I think it's incumbent upon us to really help simplify it and provide that clarity to our customers and clients. So I do think it's a significant opportunity. So what's going to contribute to future adoption of direct sourcing? That first part is critical data capture to get it into the talent community. So those, I call them cold applicants, people that applied, let's say 6 months plus, that engage with their brand, and you can invite them into a community to opt in around contingent labor. Retirees, alumni, not only full-time, but also consultants or contractors that worked with you in the past. So there's a whole ability to capture data to be able to build this opt-in community. Second is about the employment brands. The customers that we support have powerful brands that attract people, and they're spending money and RPOs are spending money to attract them to their brand. While you have them there, let's, at the career site, have them opt in. Yeah, I'd be interested in learning more. Again, remember those leftovers that they've spent money to get there. Leftovers and silver medalists, I should say. That's the ability to monetize that data. And I think that's the operative word, is monetizing the data that's just sitting there. And it's an opportunity for HR to leverage it to drive a stronger employment brand. And let's face it, not only is your employment brand being defined by full-time hiring, but it's also with your temp and contingent labor hiring. And then the third leg of the stool is technology, the platform that's going to scale and operationalize all this so you can gain all of those efficiencies and the AI that's involved in these new platforms allow you to segment and automate those communication streams that are going out. So yes, I was a bit contrarian, and there's a lot of confusion. Part of this is just educational, but I believe the future is bright with significant growth with direct sourcing and contingent labor. So I am optimistic and looking forward to collaborating with you all. You probably have experiences that you've ran into and love to be able to learn and learn from each other even after this presentation. So I really appreciate your time and the opportunity to share this particular segment in the market. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. And if you have any questions for Jason, try the Q&A function. I'm suspecting the chat is not working for participants, but you should be able to send any questions for Jason through the Q&A. Jason, I usually have tons of questions, but you were very informative.
A little too much so, huh?
I think you covered all the questions I could come up with, that just communicating the definition and addressing the confusion of direct sourcing. Definitely, that was a buzzword, I feel, the last year or two. I wasn't aware of the different stakeholders and how direct sourcing is adopted in the marketplace differently based on the solution.
Okay, I would agree. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Lamise, for the opportunity. And please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, or if you want to talk further, I'm happy to discuss some of the things I shared and also some of the experiences that you may have. So thank you.
All right. So we do have some questions. I know you can't see me. If you want to stop sharing your screen so you can see me, if that's easier, but we have a few questions. And I also, before we let the participants leave, I also have a few words to share with you before we formally end this webinar. The first question is, how does candidate quality improve with those at a career or corp versus a job board, and how are they different?
So let me see. How does candidate quality improve? Sorry, I missed the.
How does candidate quality improve with those at a career or corporation versus a job board, and how are they different?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question, but the quality improvement really is around the number. It's really defined with the number of candidates that can come into the talent community that are interested in the company and the brand and the job. And so the more that we can, staffing suppliers that support programs, they have their brands that can attract them to the position, but the client organization also has that. And as I mentioned, monetizing their own data, so either through alumni or retirees that have already been there, or they've applied to that job, can contribute to the quality of it. And then the second part I would add is the recruit attributes of direct sourcing and MSP is the ability to recruit and assess the skill set to make sure it's a good fit for that particular job. So when you combine a larger candidate pool with good quality assessing of skills, would result in a better quality outcome.
Jason, I'm going to attempt this question one more time because I think I know what Davis is asking. With direct sourcing, you're looking into your internal pool of candidates. That's what the employer already has versus looking in job boards, correct?
Yeah, they are looking at internal pool of candidates. That's true. And so
the question is, why is the quality then higher or better?
Well, with the internal pool of candidates, you would already, let's say retirees or alumni, you'd already have performance data on them, and would you want to rehire them? And again, that data would all be scrubbed. On the external side of it, yes, you can attract external people to the organization, and that's where having a good job description and a good selection process. So I think it's a combination. It's a combination of internal data pools as well as external data pools that will drive quality, in my opinion.
The next question, I think you addressed it during your presentation. Probably we can elaborate some on the top 2 to 3 challenges that you see in the adoption of direct sourcing programs.
Well, I think it's the primary one is the clients being confused with the terminology, and I think especially having staffing suppliers that are working on their open job orders that are temp, and the MSP taking over that role, leveraging their own data, like in the example, the cold applicants that I provided. Any candidates that have they've applied 6 months ago and beyond, the ability to build them into an opt-in community would really address those core pieces.
Thank you. And I like this next question, Jason. Question is, what criteria do you use to determine if a client is a good fit for a potential direct sourcing solution?
With the benefits, it's a good fit for clients that have either challenging job categories or skill sets that they're looking to fill. So often corporate jobs or professional jobs can be a really good fit. If they're looking at some of their markups, and let's say they are higher than they would like, or they're really looking to drive cost savings, that also can be a good fit. The third would be around their employment brand and the traffic that comes to their website. It's an opportunity to apply to that job, that full-time job, but then also be asked if they'd be interested in contingent labor. I would also add, many of our clients and our MSP clients, a key channel for them is, excuse me, Louise. A key channel is temp to hire. So that is about 20-25% of our contingent worker pool converts into a direct employee. So it's an excellent resource to come in as a temp, get an understanding of the organization, and then convert permanently.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. It's all great questions. And I know we are in the educational phase, as you mentioned, with direct sourcing. So I expect we will continue the conversation with more educational content from the RPOA. Before we leave, I do want to share with the audience a few upcoming also events. And I want to go ahead and share my screen to show you this as well. We have a mixed audience today, so I want to take a minute to introduce the RPOA. If you're not familiar with the association, we are a member-driven and mission-driven organization serving the global RPO ecosystem and striving to be the place to go for RPO. Our mission is to educate the marketplace about recruitment process outsourcing through the collaboration with our community. As an organization, the RPOA serves what we call the RPO ecosystem. This consists of talent acquisition professionals, leaders, RPO buyers, technology providers, HR, and analysts and consultants, as well as academics. Our corporate membership and technology sponsors provide the primary funding for the association. Our community membership is free and open to anyone, and we currently have over 5,000 community members. We also have some strategic partners that add value to our members, including Aris Group, IDC, and Clearly Rated. The association produces educational content in collaboration with corporate members and sponsors. Our content is focused on talent acquisition trends and best practices for the RPO and TA community. First, the RPO Leadership Forum is a monthly webinar series scheduled for the third Tuesday of each month when possible. This is a 30-minute webinar presented by RPOA members. Today's webinar is presented by RPOA member Broadleaf. Upcoming, and you're welcome to attend all these events, we have Shazami, a technology partner, who will be speaking next week about using technology to drive success and candidate experience for RPO providers. In June, we have a webinar presented by Advanced RPO on an insider look into recruiting trends. And in July, Orion Talent will be presenting a topic on preparing for future workforce with Director of Talent Acquisition, Catherine Feely. You can find all these events as well as others we're adding all the time on the website, the RPOA association.org under upcoming events. The second webinar program is the RPOA Expert Panel. We typically produce 3 to 4 expert panels a year. In March, we presented and hosted the first panel on recruiting in times of layoffs with 3 talent acquisition leaders from different organizations, different industries, as well as an analyst subject matter expert, sorry. You can find all webinars on demand at the RPO Academy, as well as additional resources. Lastly, I want to invite you to our premium event of the year and the only place you'll meet the largest community of people passionate about RPO. The RPOA annual conference will be in Chicago on September 24th and 26th. You are all invited. Registration is now open on the RPOA website, and we hope you can join us. With this brief overview of RPOA, I'd like to conclude today's webinar, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Please stay connected, stay engaged, and stay informed of what's happening in the talent and RPO world by tuning into the RPOA, the place to go for RPO. Thank you again to Jason, our wonderful speaker, and thank you all for your participation. Look forward to seeing you in a future webinar.